Hello there, world of tankers, and welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Droodles Blitz, and in today's video, we'll be playing in the Ultimate Noob Tank. This is the Object 268 version 4, a vehicle which basically puts all of its points into armor, and not really much else. But to be honest, I actually kind of like the gun on the V4. It's not very accurate. It has some of the worst dispersion in the game. Even running Refined Gun, we are still at 0.346 dispersion, which is not great. But to make up for that, you have 2,800 DPM with calibrated shells and 650 damage per shot. In the latest update of the game, it also got 5 more millimeters of standard pen, which means while the standard APCR isn't the best thing ever, at least it kind of evens out for the shell normalization loss that it did receive when getting its AP standard swapped to APCR. I still don't understand why Wargaming decides to just give tanks APCR standard. Like, I just want to know what the thought process is at their company. They have a perfectly good AP shell, and they say, let's ruin it. Especially for the V4, it's really sus, because this is not the most accurate vehicle, so your shells are very commonly straying off of course. The major difference for anybody that doesn't know between AP and APCR is that APCR is a much harder time going through angled surfaces due to the fact that shell normalization exists. Shell normalization essentially makes it so that when your shell hits a tank's armor, it is going to lessen the angle of attack the shell is hitting that angle at. So AP is 5 degrees. So if you're shooting at a 90-degree plate, for example, it would be 85 degrees with AP. And with APCR, I think it's 2 degrees or 3 degrees. It's one of the two. I think it's 2. Either way, it's less. So because of that, the armor is more effective against APCR, and it's harder to cut through more angled surfaces. But thankfully, as I said, this tank got a 5mm buff, which means that at least it counteracts some of that shell normalization. And with the V4's very solid armor, it almost forces every single time somebody's shooting at you to load gold. So even if you do get penned, especially with reactive armor, you can highly mitigate the amount of damage you do receive. I also really like the V4's mobility, reaching a top speed of 40 kilometers per hour, reversing at 20. It's a fairly fast tank for everything considered. We can see that very long aiming time, but the gun chunks. I mean, that was a 627 damage shell right there into the enemy Contra 1 Mark II. Now, the V4 does lack in gun depression, only featuring 6 degrees. But thankfully, you don't require gun depression to do very well in this tank. Well, what do we have up against us? Right now, the only tank destroyers that their team features are a T-30 and Contra 1 Mark II. And we can see both of these tank destroyers spotted, which means I should realistically be able to make this play over here. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to push right up on this Contra. However, we can see a great example of where I literally do not feature the gun depression to work the spot. So a good example of why this tank can be very hard to drive sometimes. Really? 17, bruh. Now, the C100 doesn't really scare me. I don't even think the E100 can really pen me, because it's running a 12.8, which has 0 penetration. So we're going to aim it on the E75 to begin with, and there you go, 613 shell into the E75, and we're up to 1,200 damage now, which isn't too bad. As I said, this tank is good DPM, so it's actually not something you're going to struggle with when trying to deal with your opponents, is cutting through their armor. We're going to aim it on the C100, and there you go. Oof, awful roll at 542, but it pens a pen, and I'm not going to get all too mad. Is our mouse going to pen him? He does, and our E100 is going to get a nice chunk out, most likely. Yes, he does as well, and while it's not that much HP left, I'll still take 120 damage. So far, not a bad start for this game. It does feel pretty fun when you're actually up against tier 9s or something like that E100 running the 128, because, as I said, it literally can't do anything, at least reliably, to my front. And in return, I can actually quite confidently cut through E100 armor with very little effort. So we have the Sheridan, but I'm not able to hit that, obviously. The Sheridan is, its turret was too hidden. So, let's see. We have the T-30 in front of us, and I would love to be able to shoot through this T-30. I'm naming on his turret cheek. Actually, there you go. Beautiful. And the T-30 also does not feature much premium pen as a tier 9 tank destroyer. It's around 330 mils of APCR. So once again, the armor on the 26A version 4 quite confidently just deals with that tank. So we have the enemy T-30 in front, we got an easy 480 damaging shell, and all that's left is the T-57 Heavy. You can see why I call this the ultimate noob vehicle. Putting on my reactive armor makes the T-57 Heavy's damage basically useless, bounces the AP shell on me as it is, and we get an 813 damage max roll straight into his tank. So this was a very solid 3,800 damage game. There's not many tank destroyers that can get away with doing what I just did in that battle. I mean, sure, you could say a WZ-113 or, you know, an E3 might be able to make that play, but even then, in both of those tanks, when you drive into the open, you are exposing your weaker frontal plates. But in this tank, the weakest spot is really your superstructure, where your lower plates are 340-ish to 350 millimeters thick, depending on how you can angle it. Not to say the 26A version 4 doesn't have it. That's not to say the 26A version 4 doesn't have its fair share of downsides. First of all, 152mm cannons can overmatch the roof of this vehicle, so that means the enemy T95, BZ-75, and 60TP, if they are smart enough, will shoot my roof and penetrate every single time. Not only that, but with the calibrated shells changes, which was added a couple months ago, you can cut through the lower plate of this tank quite easily now, and with the poor accuracy, it's not great if you miss your shots. So you do have a lot of downsides to counteract the great armor and solid damage per shot you feature. But I still really like the V4. It's actually one of my favorite tank destroyers in the game because I just love the playstyle. I love being able to play aggressive. I love being able to kind of just get away with moves that you normally wouldn't be able to. Now we have that 4005, for example. We activate our reactive, but even then, this 4005 obviously can cut through my armor quite easily. But we only lost about 500 health from a tank that would normally be able to rip me to shreds. And that's something that I also love about this tank, which is the reverse speed. This tank reverses very quickly, a lot faster than you'd think. It actually goes upwards of 20 kilometers per hour in reverse, which is really nice, and it allows you to get out of really any tricky situations you might be in. So we have that 4005, and I'd love to be able to hit him, but oh, just not yet. Come on, show me your roof, you little goober. Come on. It's just not enough to see his roof yet. And I'm just going to back up. I can see that my grill and the rest of my team is not doing too well right now. Yeah, there's just no way I can hit that. So, I'm just going to back up over here. We'll see if I can get some damage into these players and support with these 60 TP. So, let's aim, and there's the grill. Hello, grill. I'm going to load in an HE shell, and there you go, 744 damage, getting an easy clear. Unfortunately for me, it's not looking all too good for my team. I got the 4005, and I got basically no support right now, so really the best play I can make is to try and, I don't really know. I'm not worried about the 60, at least personally I'm not. I'm just going to aim it on this tank. There you go, 692, and then we back up. I do have support now. Oh, but we got the 95 in my rear. Literally nothing I can do about that. That sucks. Oh boy. Oh joy. Yeah, driving a tank destroyer at the end of the day has its limitations, and not having a turret is a pretty big limitation if you ask me. We're going to load a gold shell to clear the T95, and then we're going to angle the vehicle up, and beautiful. Once again, the armor on this tank doing its job. And we can see, like, the armor is very effective. It's really effective. People don't realize that while the V4's armor was kind of nerfed, it still does a very good job at what it needs to, which is getting bounces. So we have that 4005, who appears like he's going to roll around this corner, and come on, poke it. No, doesn't look like he's going to. Okay. Well, while the grill is looking at that, I'm going to try and... The problem is, the way that this corner is angled, I can't really make my way around it. So, there's the 4005. I'm still waiting for him to roll around that corner. Come on, do it. Yes, beautiful. 650 damage right into his tank. Unfortunately, he does kill my teammate, but I'm able to put on my reactive, and because of the 4005 missing one shell on me, he cannot clear me with his other shots, which is obviously pretty good. Problem is base cap. If you look at the base cap, it is soaring mighty high, and there's really not much I can do about that apart from pray. So let's roll around this corner. Let's aim it on the BZ. There you go, 588 damage shot, clearing his tank. And now we are going to reload and sit in the base cap. Well, let's see. There's the 4005. But unfortunately, I do die. My team just wasn't very good. While I did have a Kron, bro, you're missing the Lord Blade of a Progetto 2 times, man. But the base cap was the problem in this battle. And to be honest, it wasn't really the 4005's problem at all. We did around 4,000 damage, we blocked a decent amount, our reactive armor helped us out big time too. You can see why I really like this tank. While the gun is kind of mid, it doesn't matter because you're usually driving this tank front to midline, so you don't really miss too many shots. Because it hits so hard, and because people are always firing gold at this tank, it still has a very good survivability rate. I really like this vehicle. I think that in a good player's hands, it can be quite the solid vehicle. My win rate's pretty solid in it at 72%, and it's a fun tank. So, yeah, I really like the V4. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video and you liked it just as much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.